Should the Marcos administration enforce this no booster, no entry policy? To discuss this, we have with us on the show Private Sector Advisory Council member Joey Concepcion. Good evening. Welcome to The Big Story, Mr. Concepcion.
Good evening, Gretchen. Good evening, Robbie.
Sir, always on the other side of this is always the qualifier from everybody, acknowledging that we cannot actually mandate vaccination for our people. And yet we still keep talking about proposals such as this. How different or how far is this from actually trying to mandate without any law, or even a law for that matter, that everybody says will not pass?
Well, you know, as far as February, I was pushing for that same idea, no? And at that time, Sec Maynard felt that it was not legal to do such, and so the government did not support the proposal. And I think if you do the mandate now, when the booster uptake is very low, the problem is that we're coming from a lockdown. We're faced with a lot of headwinds with the inflation going up, and consumers are feeling it, as well as the manufacturers who are having a hard time passing the price increases. So if you don't have a booster shot, you can't enter the business establishments, the restaurants and all of that, the movie theaters. Their sales will really be affected. So it's not practical. Maybe unless the government will see that it's legal, and maybe what they can do is give them a timeline, say 60 days or 90 days from today, we will implement this order. No? So you give everybody the chance to take the booster shot. No? But if you implement it a week or 2 weeks from now, then you will see a lot of problems again with the restaurant owners complaining, the fast food owners complaining, and other business establishments, because the booster uptake is quite low.
Yeah, but Mr. Concepcion, we'll leave it at that, muna, at least the question of whether or not it's legal or unconstitutional. But to something else that you said, is it possible also that we are trying to attack this problem on the wrong end? Because at the other end of it, the basic problem is still uptake for vaccination and, for that matter, booster shots. Shouldn't we all just instead be concentrating on precisely how to convince more people to take their boosters, and that takes care of everything else?
That's right. Although, the challenge that we face, in fact, we met Secretary Benhar-Abalos a couple of days back together with the ACE group, and he loved our suggestions. So we will try to make a serious effort again to really campaign the importance of the booster shots. One incentive that we have proposed in that recommendation to the President is that if we are able to hit 70% of the 70% that have taken the primary doses, which is basically 50%. So if it's 70 million that have taken those primary doses, we have to target at least 70% of that. So that's about 50 million. Then maybe if we accomplish that, or the different regions or provinces accomplish that, then the chance of outdoor mask can be optional. So that's the kind of reward or privilege if we're able to attain that. And so I think that is one idea that we can do. You incentivize people to, if they attain this goal, then we can make outdoor masks optional for those areas that have attained that. So vaccine mandate, I think it's getting pretty tough to push that. If the current group wants to push it, you can't do it tomorrow. You have to give them lead time to be able to get the population boosted. No?
With the new variants dominating now the COVID-19 pandemic here in the Philippines, do you think it's actually possible or feasible for us, and do you see it happening soon enough, us going maskless? Because yesterday, the doctors were saying that we should still keep our masks on, given that these new variants are actually evasive of the current vaccines. So with that said, how do we get people sold on the idea of taking their booster shots?
First of all, what we've recommended basically is 70% of the 70% that have taken the primary doses. If we attain that, in attaining the booster level, by the way, it's not easy. No, it's a tall order to even attain 50% booster rate, since we're way below 20%. No? So, but that's an incentive. There are other conditions. No, we should be basically in green, which you are recommending. ADAR below 6, HCUR way below 50%. No? So those are the incentives. So I believe that it is possible. Of course, we're not talking here of indoor. Huh? We're talking here of only just outdoor, and that is a way of giving incentives. In fact, President Marcos has been looking towards that side, no? And this is why we're making this recommendation. So you have to, if you look at the other ASEAN countries, many of them have removed the outdoor mask. But of course, their booster uptake is much higher than the Philippines now. So we have a long way to go. From the 20s, we have to take that up close to 60%, 70%, hopefully, no?
What are the lessons so far from the private sector, particularly with workers? That on the one hand, you face the same, our employers face the same questions and the same dilemmas. You cannot mandate it. At the same time, for the service sector in particular, they do need their workers to be on site. How has the private sector navigated this? What are the best practices and remaining challenges on that front?
Well, remember, Robbie, earlier on, there were certain mandates done. No vax, no ride. There was also a time when the government allowed that employees who are not vaccinated will be required to take an RT-PCR test every 2 weeks at their expense. So we used that, and we were able to convince many of our employees to take the booster shots. The primary doses first and eventually the booster shots. But now, without that, we have seen that a number of employees who have taken the booster shot wants to take actually the second shot, which HTAC is preventing those below 60 years old, especially 50 years old and above, to take the second booster shot. So, but yes, it can be done, and that was a lesson, a learning point for us. And of course, we know our employees. We have certain levels of authority that we can really encourage them. And they know that the risk of wasting their sick leaves as they get sick, that some of these sick leaves are incashable. So then again, we have our ways. And that's why the vaccination rate in the private sector is quite high.
Okay, maraming salamat po. That was Private Sector Advisory Council member Joey Concepcion.